What's up, guys? Pypo here, bringing you a video today on what the worst World of Warcraft expansion was. Now, this is going to require some discussion, and I want to talk about each expansion in its own right before I come to my decision and basically go over my decision with you guys. And I also want to know what your guys' opinion is on what the fuck is the worst expansion in the game. There's probably a few out there that I can imagine people picking. There's a few that I think people will remember very well, but at the same time weren't actually as good as they remember. Maybe they have a good amount of nostalgia for that expansion, and that's why they remember it in such a good way. But I want to talk about everything. I'm going to talk about vanilla as well, like it's an expansion, because basically I see it as an expansion. Even though it's the start of the game and it wasn't classified as an expansion, it's like just the base game. I'm still going to talk about it as if it was, because I think there's a few things to be said about it. But I'm going to start from most recent and go to the first, being vanilla. So Warlords of Draenor is the most recent expansion for WoW, and it's the one I can talk about the least simply because it hasn't been out for very long. Now, this game is moving forward always, and it seems to be always progressing and gaining subscribers and doing things. Every now and then it has a dip, or something goes down, or something goes wrong, or Blizzard takes a misstep. But Warlords of Draenor has seen basically new subscriber growth for Blizzard like they could never have, hoped for. It happens in nearly every expansion, though. I can't really imagine any expansion where Blizzard doesn't get a good amount of subscriber growth, but it always kind of seems to teeter off towards the end. So I can't really judge these expansions off of subscriber growth. Instead, I'm going to base them off the actual content and my experience with the game. Now, the game itself, as far as Warlords is concerned, I think it is taking a step backwards in a few areas. The PvP, as of right now, is broken, in my honest opinion, and it's only the first patch, and I'm waiting for the next patch being 6.1 to see if this comes into a fix. And basically, I don't want to judge this expansion too harshly, simply because a lot of the expansions do have this kind of weird phase at the beginning of them where stuff isn't balanced, and they're trying to balance PvE and PvP, and they've added things they need to put into perspective and stuff like that. But the few things I want to talk about is garrisons. Now, garrisons are a complete step in the wrong direction, in my opinion. I don't say that because player housing is a no-no. I don't say it because of that. I'm saying because it doesn't fit WoW. Because WoW has looking for raid and has LFR and has, fucking groups and just queuing up for BGs and all that kind of shit. But since they've added that, and I'll get into that a bit more in a little bit here, but since they've added that, garrisons have made the game a completely anti-social experience. I think 90% of the player base now sits in a garrison that they made, and they just sit there by themselves, hitting a queue, and then waiting for it to pop to go into a dungeon or a raid, where they then sit and don't talk to anyone for the entirety until the raid's over, then they fucking leave, and it's becoming a completely antisocial and non-MMO experience. It's not massively multiplayer. It's me and 25 other people I randomly get queued with, and then I leave. It doesn't feel massively multiplayer. And that's just part of the game since they've added looking for raid and that sort of thing, but it's almost gotten worse since they added garrisons, because there's no reason to ever really leave your garrison unless you're doing world PvP or farming. Like, that's about it. Or if you want to go to Ashram, which is a colossal fuck up as far as PvP is concerned. Ashram queues and stuff like that are the worst thing in the game right now, and a lot of people still can barely even fucking do it. So I see garrisons as a step backwards. I'm not saying I have anything against player housing. I'm just saying for WoW, the way they did it, it didn't work, and it honestly made the game more antisocial for me, which I don't like. They could have done something a little bit different, but I honestly, I don't know what they could have done different. All I know is what they did do. It is kind of a step backwards. I'm not saying the garrisons aren't cool. I'm not saying it's a good idea. I'm just saying, in my personal experience, it's made the game worse. But that's all I can say for WoD. Now, before WoD was MoP. Now, it was probably the worst hate, or the most hated expansion before its release. Now, if you guys remember like I do, MoP was absolutely hated on like crazy. It was the most, like, crazily hated on. I hated on it. I remember talking to friends and being like, I don't want to play some Kung Fu Panda fucking expansion. What the fuck is this Panda bullshit going on? And I genuinely didn't like the lead up. I didn't like the trailers. I didn't like anything about it, to the point where I didn't play MoP until about, I think, 5.2 or something like that. Now, the game itself, the leveling was, in my opinion, really rough. I didn't like the leveling through Mr. Pandaria. It was kind of slow when I didn't care about all these things that were happening. The Panda starting zone in and of itself was a pain in the fucking dick. I did it once and will never do it again. and that was just, I just didn't like it. It was way too slow, and I didn't have an invested interest in pandas. It's just after Cataclysm, they stopped putting in interesting lore characters that I actually care about. I mean, with Warlords, there's a few orcs here and there that are interesting, but they've done it in such a way that I just don't give a fuck. And I honestly think the last lore based expansion that I actually cared about was Wrath and before. So that's just, as far as lore is concerned, Mop, I think, should have shown everyone that Blizzard can pull a fucking expansion out of their asshole and do whatever the fuck they want, because they've somehow pulled an expansion out of a really random place. So I don't think Blizzard will ever have a problem creating content, at least. But as far as the expansion itself, it also it hurt heavily from the looking for raid and stuff like that. I honestly believe that it was one of the worst decisions ever to add looking for raid to the game. It became a casual game almost immediately when that happened. PvP, as far as it's concerned, wasn't too bad. It was very unbalanced for a few patches there, but 5.4 PvP was actually kind of balanced. In saying that, I should also mention that 5.4 is the longest fucking patch in the world. And honestly, I don't understand how Blizzard can get away with doing something like that when you're playing a subscription for an MMO game that constantly gets updated and changes and stuff like that. And I'm paying basically, I paid for basically a single player experience. You know, there is a finite game that is complete for over a year, and I think it was like almost a year and a half, or at least a year and a couple months for like that was it. There was no changes. So naturally, people got extremely bored during that period of time in the game, and I don't blame them. I almost considered quitting WoW about halfway through and managed to stick around just because I was doing YouTube videos and keeping myself entertained. But if I wasn't doing that, I honestly wouldn't have played the game because it was just the same thing over and over and over again. As far as the difficulty of raiding and stuff like that, obviously LFR makes raiding completely bullshit. And on top of that, I think LFR makes people not want to do actual hardcore raids because, in my personal experience, when I went and did an LFR, I wouldn't want to then go see the content that was just harder. That wasn't, it took the fun out of it. Like, the fun of raiding used to be downing a boss for the first time, even though it was difficult, and experiencing that. Whereas now it's like, you go, you see a boss, you kill it, it's in LFR, you get some shitty gear, and then it's like, oh, you want to do normal? It's like, no, well, not really. I've already seen the boss. I've already killed it. Like, if I down it again, I'm just downing a slightly more difficult version. I don't care about it. It doesn't interest me anymore because I've already seen it. So that's why LFR is kind of meh. And the dungeons themselves were kind of bullshit. They never really required any form of CC in the dungeons, which to me, I really miss when CC was actually a part of the fucking game outside of PvP. But that's just my opinion. But yeah, so Mop was. There's other things I can talk about from Mop, like for instance the lore being completely bullshit and not liking it, but everyone already knows these things. I just wanted to reiterate that I honestly don't think it was that great of an expansion, in my personal opinion. Before Mop, though, came Cataclysm, which made a bold move to change a lot of the landmass and to change a lot of the way the world looks. Now, this, on paper, I think was a fantastic idea, but in reality, it made a lot of the old school and vanilla players and people who've been playing for a long time, even myself, I kind of dislike going anywhere now. I don't like going places in the WoW and being like, well, this is where I used to do stuff, and this is where I used to do this, and blah, blah, blah. Like, it took away something that I really enjoyed about the game, which was basically being in 100% extreme knowledge of where everything was. And you might think, well then, oh, it's fun to go rediscover, but it wasn't. It wasn't the same anymore. It was a completely different world, and it was like I was playing a completely different game, but I didn't enjoy it. They also introduced flying, I think it was in Cataclysm, to the world itself, which means like everywhere. You can fly everywhere. And this, honestly, to me, was one of the worst decisions Blizzard have ever made. I've talked about it in a previous video. And I really dislike being able to fly everywhere. It makes the game seem a lot smaller. It makes it seem a lot less epic. It makes a lot of things that I used to do and have fun doing completely void now. You no longer can jump on Goldshire Roof and troll Alliance. Like, even though I guess people might see that as like a exploit, it just, to me, it was how I had fun in WoW, and they just took that shit away from me. As far as the raiding goes, some of the raids were pretty fun. Some of the raids were extremely hard. Which I actually commended and enjoyed that because it actually preserves a challenge, I guess. And because of that, I liked a lot of the raids. But one of the worst raids, if not the worst raid, is in Cataclysm, which was Dragon Soul. Absolutely horrible raid, just terrible. No, I don't think anyone liked Dragon Soul, to be honest with you. The mechanics and the fights and even the lore behind it, like Thrall being the hero. For some reason in Cataclysm they decided to make some of the favorite lore characters into weird pussy assholes. And it's just like, I don't understand why they decided to do this, but you're basically ruining my childhood by changing things that I really liked and enjoyed into weird new people that I hate. But that's just the way Blizzard goes, I guess. But before Cataclysm, Wrath the Lich King. Wrath the Lich King is some of my best memories in WoW. Wrath the Lich King was, honestly, in my opinion, one of the better expansions. It had Nax, it had fucking Ulduar, it had ICC, and it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. I think Winter's Grasp was a bit of a step back, and it was an experiment. It wasn't too bad. It was the first thing in the game like that, besides the vanilla things and World PvP that had in vanilla. So honestly, I think it was a bit of an experiment, so it wasn't too bad, but I didn't really enjoy it that much. But the raiding itself was really fun. Dungeons were a bit too easy, in my opinion. Dungeons didn't really require too much like effort or anything. I remember just balls to the walls, my way through all of the dungeons and not having to really think about it. Heroic farming was a real thing where you basically didn't even have to think in a heroic. You just went in and just got it done. But the raiding itself was still difficult and it was still fun, and you were forced to then join a raiding guild and to get raiding done and to do hard raids, which made the game enjoyable because it meant you had to basically communicate and have a good quality team to get stuff done. Which honestly to me is the whole basis of an MMO and an MMORPG, is to have to do that kind of team-based fighting to overcome a greater threat. Now, in saying that, PvP is also, or Wrath Lich King I should say, is when I started to notice PvP and I started to really get into arenas and stuff like that. And that's basically when I took a turn from playing WoW for PvE to playing WoW for PvP and really enjoying it. But at the same time, I did both, and it made me extremely busy, and I spent a lot of my time doing this. And honestly, Wrath of the Lich King was probably my favorite time during WoW. I'm not saying it's my favorite expansion, I'm just saying it was my favorite time during WoW because of the amount of stuff I had to do, the amount of friends I made from raiding and the stuff we did together, and the memories I have are all from Wrath of the Lich King, and they're all the best memories I have of WoW. In saying that, before Wrath was BC. Now, BC was basically when I really got into the game, because I came into vanilla late. But BC was, they expanded on their original idea of vanilla, and they moved forward, and they took it to Outlands, where they explored new lore characters that everyone was interested in. Everyone was like, Illidan, of course. Everyone's fucking love that shit. And they did new raids that were hard, difficult. They had dungeons where it was required for you to actually CC and do things like that, and CC this and CC that. And CC was actually part of the game, and I fucking loved that. I played a mage, and I'd always be designated sheeper, and I'd be sheeping and deepsing, and I'd have to actually pay attention to two things at once instead of just casting a fucking frostbolt at some Naga bitch. Just, it mixed it up and made it a lot more difficult and harder and interesting and fun. That's what it did. And also back then there's no LFR still, there's none of that shit, so you actually have to talk and be in a guild and raid, and the raids were fucking fantastic. Some of the best raids in WoW. Some of them were very hard and a bit long, on the long side, but they were very good raids, very interesting raids, and of course lore-based raids that I was actually interested in doing, and actually interested in killing some of these bosses because there were people I was aware of and interested in. And BC, I think, was definitely a step forward from vanilla, and they did a really, really good job in making the game better with one expansion, and they really accomplished it. And honestly, is still one of the better expansions to this date out of the bunch. Now, vanilla. Vanilla, I think a lot of people remember way too, I guess, fondly. I think a lot of times people say I really liked vanilla or old school WoW. They're actually talking about BC, because vanilla, from my experience, I played the last 6 months of vanilla, and it was extremely buggy, extremely broken. There was a lot of problems. A lot of the stuff in the game that actually makes the game fun wasn't even in yet. There's a lot of faffing about, trying to open up doors to raids and stuff like that. And it was a lot of people running around like headless chickens. In saying that, it was still extremely fun, and at the time, it was one of the first games like this. That's kind of why it got away with being kind of buggy, kind of broken, kind of not holding a lot of content, was because it was one of the first games like this. So everyone was on there just extremely having a good time and finding their own stuff to do and exploring this huge world and questing. And I mean, Silithus didn't even have fucking quests in it by the time I got down there. Silithus was just an empty zone with nothing in there. Like the game was literally unfinished, but it didn't matter because it was so like fun and so awesome. In saying that, it's nowhere near the best expansion. It's nowhere near my best memories, and I don't think vanilla should have such a high standing with the player base as it does, because I think a lot of people are just nostalgic and they remember it being really fantastic because it was their first experience with a game like this. When in reality, it was very buggy, it was very broken, it was very unfinished. But in saying that, there are a few things to commend, like the raid difficulties, the 40-mans and stuff like that. While 40-mans could be seen as a downside back then because people's PCs could barely handle it, today, if they wanted to bring back 40-mans, as they did in Molten Core, it's very fun, it's a very cool experience. And a lot of the raids back then were hard. I miss a lot of the old school things like resistances and having to have certain types of gear. I miss having like different kind of classes on races. I miss the vanilla feel of the game. Everyone's a noob, and there's few players that know they're really good and they're in the high rating guild, and someone got one epic and you see that epic and you're like, holy fucking dicks, that guy's an epic. Or if you see it's someone with a legendary and you fucking jizz in your pants because you just saw Medivh's staff and you're like, how the fuck does this guy have this thing? It's amazing. Fucking Thunder Fury. What is this lightning sword that you have, sir, that I've never seen until you, and I probably will never see again past this one player that I happen to run into? The game felt epic. It felt amazing. You'd see gear and be like, holy shit. And even though it made you feel like a noob, it made you aspire to be something better. And I honestly think WoW is missing that feel today. I don't know if that's maybe nostalgia. I'm not sure. But after talking about all the expansions, guys, I think you guys are aware that I have to give it to Mr. Pandaria. I think Mr. Pandaria was the worst expansion in the game. Cataclysm is a close second to being the worst, but I think Mob's going to take it there. I want to know what you guys think is the worst expansion in the game. Let me know your reasoning as well in the comments, guys, and thank you for watching. Have a good life, have a good year. Oh, God, I couldn't even fucking get that out. Have a good day, have a good life, have a good year, guys. I will see you in the next video. See you, guys.